Hello, I'm Andy King, technical editor of Good Woodworking magazine, and today we're going to do a little bit of work on basic workshop rotation within machinery. Okay, so what we've done now, we've established everything we need to know on here, all our information is there. So from that point now, I can mark out. Now this is my head and sill of my frame. I'll find the other one, which is there. So I know my overall width. I know my shoulder lines are in. Everything is there. So all I need to do is drop that on and mark. Now I know my overall width. I'm not really concerned about that because obviously once the mortises are in, that can't go anywhere else but in the right position. So therefore the outsides will determine themselves. All I'm looking for is shoulder line positions and mortise positions here. So with that in mind, I'm going to drop this onto here now and mark those positions in. That's that one there, that one there, that one there, and there, and that's that. As I say, this is where people will say this is wrong because I'm now going to be marking off of the rebate. But as I say, because it was gauged off of the fence on there, it should be accurate enough for what we need to be doing here. Now one thing you need to remember here, this is going to be a step joint. Because you've got a rebate, what's going to happen is the piece that comes down into the joint here, the mortise will be here for argument's sake. When the tenon drops in, you need to take up this gap here, so there will be a step obviously, so the joint will be stepped up. So you need to allow for that when you do your marking out for the actual tenons themselves. So on this one, as I say, this one is just the one I'm going to be dropping on here, which is going to be determining the actual mortise position, so I'll just check that again before we get too carried away. That's there and there. Now on this one, because it's the overall width of the actual project I'm looking at, I'm now going to be striking in what will be the mortise, which is there and there, and likewise on this side, which is there and there. Now this is my edge now, so I can actually transfer this around the other side, not a problem. Now what I've done on this one is because this will be cut off, this is now, as I say, this, although it's going to become a mortise and tenon initially, invariably when it's fitted, this end gets cut off, it becomes a bridle joint, but normally, as I say, these are either nailed or screwed down through, so it doesn't really affect what you're doing with the joint itself. But you look at that one, you just draw that back over there, and all you're doing is transferring your marks to the back. For if you're doing any through tenons. If you're doing stub tenons, you just mark the face, you don't need to do the back. So, establish those. Again, the face edge is over here. So you flip your square around and just pull those back. And again on there. So basically what that is essentially the thickness of that. Because I've not allowed for any actual removal of the tenon itself, thinning it down like that. Normally I would do it that thick for argument's sakes, give myself a little piece of tenon shoulder there to constrain it. But as I say, it doesn't really need it because invariably these are built into openings. So with that one established, basically that becomes then a pattern you can mark the other one off of. So you can actually use that one back to back. And it's always good to mark as pairs. Although you can come off your rod, rods are good, but I prefer when I'm doing stuff like this, mark one off the rod and then use one to mark a pair. If I'm doing loads of them, I'll probably rely on the rod actually, because it's very easy to start introducing incremental errors if you use one. If you don't mark it up as a pattern, you could actually do that one, slightly little discrepancy on your shoulder lines there for argument's sakes, use that one as the next pattern and so on and so on and so on. All you're doing is introducing more and more errors. So if you mark off one, mark it as pattern, and make sure you use it as such and rely on that one only. That way then you don't have to refer back to your rod, you've got a pattern. If you're out on site anywhere, you need to refer back to something, the rod can stay in the workshop, this can go out with you as the pattern, as your reference point, if you need it for anything else other than obviously basic joinery like this. So again, those shoulder lines are marked through and transferred around. And once you've established that, you're ready to go to the mortiser and they can be cut. but obviously you want to do all your marking up first. You don't want to be doing one and then going back, marking up, and then going back again. So take it as read that those are done. Now what you need to do now is obviously determine your mortises, your tenons should I say, on what is now essentially your jamb. These are the head and sill. So again, use your longer part of the rod now, which is the other one you set out to. Now you're looking at now marking in what will be the offsets here and here of the shoulder lines. You've got to mark these in accordingly. So again, drop your timber on, and you just look at your lines there, and you just look to put in one shoulder there and one there, and again one there, and one there. And again, just establish those. Now this is where you've got to step in the shoulder now. All you've got to remember is the higher is the shorter shoulder. So what you're looking at now is this is the higher part of the timber, so this will be the shorter part. The rebated part is lower, means it's got to be longer because it's got to fit into the rebate that goes alongside it. So when you mark these two lines through, you need to think, right, okay, that one needs to be marked in, as does this one. In actual fact, that should have been marked off of that face because I swung the square around. So we'll just check that. And again there. Again, shorter shoulders in. So now we've got the other two to be transferred around. Again, that's my edge, so I can work off of that face. So that's my other shoulder. And again, if you just line that shoulder in, because this will be cut away, and then just drop that back over, halfway over there, just enough to go back over where you need to be. Likewise on this side. And again, just pull that over there. Now you've got to pull this other line through now, which is going to be this step one here. Now you could step it right around there if you want. It's a lot of work. You don't really need to do that. Again, just transfer it around and pull it through as you need to. So you've already established the mark. Just do little lines like that so you don't confuse yourself. And then once you're in the right position is the way you need to be, strike it through. Again, only halfway, because you're only cutting halfway because part of this will be left in will be the tenon. So you just need to do shoulder to shoulder line. That's all you're looking to do. Again, transfer it over. And that's your shoulder lines established. Now you could, if you want to, just pull that one back in just to define it so you know where it is. And you can see exactly what's what then. So what you can see now is when this is marked, this will be the tenon here. That's tenon. This comes away. This comes away. There's your step. That sits down into the rebate line. This sits up on this high point here. So you've done that. You do the same both ends. Again, all marked off the rod. So again, if you get confused, it's very simple. You think, that doesn't look right to me. Put it back on, you think, I've marked it back to front, which is an old favourite, is you put what should be the short line where the long one is, the long one where the short one is. It's an easy mistake to make, but that's where the rod is, the beauty of it. You just check back and you can see immediately where you've gone wrong. So basically you do that on everything you've got. Again, use them as pairs. Again, that way then, any discrepancy with you picking up off your rod, which you shouldn't do, but if you do make a slight mistake and you pick up a very, very slight discrepancy there, if it's on the actual workpiece, what you're doing then is keeping those two the same. So at least when you put it together, they're going to be parallel. You won't start introducing tapers or anything like that. It's, for me, not the way. I'd prefer, honestly, to actually make sure I'm right first time. So I'd always sort of check back. I'd mark up, check it just to be on the safe side, and then go from there. So you do the same again with the door. Now the door is a lot easier actually, because what you've got here is your straight shoulder lines. All you're doing is joint to joint. It's just going to butt in like that. That's it. And all you're looking to do is just drop a little tongue off of that into there, and also allow the mortise to come through. It's going to sit through sort of so much through the back edge. So it will be a tenon through there, and it will have a little haunch onto there, which will sit in to fill the groove up. So again, the principle is onto the rod, drop it on. Now what you're looking at now, you're looking at mortise positions. Now, again, this is where I prefer to do it this way, because it's very easy to introduce mistakes if you do. Some people prefer to do, or they're marking out and they're mortising and then do their machining after, which isn't a problem as such, but if you're in a situation like this, it's very easy to get into you're looking at that situation there for argument's sake, or should I say that way. where you've got a rail coming into a stile and you think, okay, I'll just chop my mortise and I'll just do it there to there. And you chop that mortise right the way through, not a problem at all, until you actually machine. Now when you machine your groove out, what you've basically removed is that much out of your mortise line. So your mortise actually has to start there. The mortise in this position doesn't start on this outside face, it starts here on the floor of this groove. So again, that's why I prefer the rod. If you mark from the rod and mark from your initial machining marks, that way then anything you mark from in theory should be accurate. It eliminates any sort of discrepancy you can bring in by doing square stock, doing mortise and tenons, that sort of stuff, and then deciding to machine up after. It makes life a little bit more complicated in some areas, easier in others. This is the way I prefer to do it. So again, you're back on your rod, you look at this and you know full well that, as I just said, that there is the outside edge of your mortise line there. All you need to determine now is how much you want that mortise to stick in here, or on this one, whichever one it is. You just need to look at that and think, okay, again, you can look at sort of a good basis being, I'm looking at the mortise or the tenon is going to be starting at that point there, and I can look at it maybe finishing about there. It's no hard and fast rule. You need a sort of good sort of third ratio, roughly again, 2/3, 1/3. So you do a rough ballpark figure, you think, okay, I'll leave that much in, that comes out as a haunch.